Harry. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, Georgina.
This is episode 7 of Timber Talks. Today, it's not as positive as our other ones we've done out on site, because this one we're going to be talking about the global market. Can you tell us what is going on in the forest products market with everything that's going on in Ukraine?
Yeah, okay. So obviously we've seen the dire news from Russia and Ukraine, and the result on our part of the commercial sector is having a major effect, as it is in many other parts of the economy. Russia and Ukraine and Belarus are major exporters of forest products, both as roundwood, but increasingly as sawnwood. And that's ceased for several reasons, not least because under FSC rules, an area of conflict, where you can't take timber from an area of conflict. So there's really profound impacts as a result of that, because Russia's a large exporter of forest products. I believe the figure is somewhere in the region of 10 million cube of sawn, of which about 400,000 ends up in the British market, but much of the rest will end up within the European market. And then roundwood, there's quite a large export of roundwood into the paper markets as raw material for the paper markets in Finland, for example. So if we sort of break that down a bit more, there's potentially going to be a substantial deficit of sawn timber in Central Europe as a result of all of this, and it comes along at the same time as we've seen a reduction in the sawlog harvest in Central Europe, as forest health has improved, because we've seen less outbreaks of beetle damage from IPS infections. We've had cooler summers in Central Europe for the last year or so. So the harvest in Central Europe had really peaked for a period and has now had to come back into balance. So there's a substantial reduction in the cut. So there's less roundwood for the sawmills in Central Europe to harvest, and there'll be less sawnwood coming in from Russia. So potentially quite a substantial deficit there. In the roundwood markets, similar results really. So Finland's likely to see a substantial deficit of raw material for paper making, and the export of panel products, for example, from Russia will or has ceased, and so many of the panel producers in Russia were supplying Eastern Europe, and so the consequence of that again is there will be a shortage of things like chipboard, OSB in Central Europe. So really profound impacts in the market. And obviously at the same time we've seen the energy market turned upside down. We're seeing prices of diesel and gas and things, oil spike. So that's a double-edged sword for some of the sawmills out there. The sawdust prices have gone up because they make or some sawmills make sawdust into pellets that go into the energy market. So it's both negative and positive effects on those markets. At the same time, the United States market, we've seen that come back. So the high prices that we had seen at the early part of the year that mirrored what had happened last year, in the last couple of weeks we've seen the index there come back quite substantially as there's concerns about weakness in the United States market. So how's that all impacting on us? We'd expect as a result of all of this we'd see sawn prices spiking here, but we haven't seen that yet, and we may do in the future. But at the moment the sawn market in Britain is really quite depressed, and we're seeing sales steady but not strong at the moment. we're just approaching Easter, and typically this is when the market may pick up. But if we don't, we could see sawmills continuing to work on short time as we go forward, because sawmills will not want to carry the very high inventory of stock, finished good stocks that they've got into the back end. So if we don't see demand picking up through May and June, we may see issues for the sort of working profile of the sawmills as we go forward. So that's probably a summary of where we are with the market for forest products at the moment.
Lovely, thank you.